Welcome everybody. We are discussing the chapter Cell, the Unit of Life. This is chapter 8 of class 11th Biology. In our previous session, we discussed Introduction to Cell, in which we discussed about the discovery of cell theory. Then in details we discussed about the prokaryotic cell. Now in today's session, we'll discuss eukaryotic cell, cell membrane and cell wall. So let us start our discussion. As I have told you that depending upon the nature of the nucleus, the cells are of two types, that is prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. And prokaryotic cell we have already discussed in our previous session. Today we will discuss the eukaryotic cell. So let us first see what does an eukaryotic cell composed of. An eukaryotic cell consisting of the external structures, which includes the appendages like flagella, cilia, glycocalyx, capsule, slime layer. Then the cell envelope, it includes the cell wall, cytoplasmic membrane or cell membrane or plasma membrane. Then the internal structures include the nucleus and the cell organelles which are present in the cytoplasm. The cell organelles are endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, ribosome, lysosome, mitochondria, chloroplast, cytoskeleton, which includes the microtubules and microfilaments. So these structures we will discuss one by one in details with their function. But before that, we should know what is eukaryotic cell. The eukaryotes includes all the protists. Protist means all the unicellular eukaryotic organisms. The higher plants, animals, fungi, bryophytes, pteridophytes. So these are all eukaryotic organism because they have eukaryotic cell. Then what is eukaryotic cell? Eukaryotic cell means the cell which has a well organized nucleus with nuclear membrane is there. And the nucleus contains the hereditary material, that is the DNA, which is confined to a particular region, that is called nucleus. And the eukaryotic cells are not identical. Their shape, size, structure varies with their function. For example, the plant cell and animal cell are different from each other in some aspects, like in some structure as well as in function. Similarly, the cell's eukaryotic cell of one organ is different from the other organ. But however, this is the structure of a animal cell I am showing you here. So the plant cell is also having almost all cell organelles and the structures which are present in the animal cell with some exceptions. So if you recollect the structure of prokaryotic cell and compare that with this eukaryotic cell, you can understand how this eukaryotic cell is complex than the prokaryotic cell. So this is with the help of this picture only I want to show you the complexity of the eukaryotic cell as compared to the prokaryotic cell. And rest of the things we will discuss one by one. What are the complexities and why it is complex, why its function is complex, and what are the complexities in their structure and function, that we will discuss one by one. And as I have told you, all cells have a common structure, and this is the common structure or the common parts of a eukaryotic cell, that is the cell membrane, then the cytoplasm, then the nuclear membrane, the nucleus, and in the cytoplasm the ribosomes are there. So this is common to all the cells, but besides that the other cell organelles, their presence, their number varies from cell to cell depending upon their location and function. So let us start the cell membrane, our discussion with cell membrane. It is the outer envelope of the eukaryotic cell, which is present in both plant and animal cell. It is thin, electromicroscopic, elastic and regenerative membrane. And most important feature of this membrane is that it is selectively permeable. Selectively permeable means the membrane can allow only some selected substances to pass through it, or the transport of only selected substance can take place through this membrane. That's why it is called selectively permeable. Okay, and this cell membrane is also called plasma membrane, and we'll discuss the composition of this plasma membrane. But here let me show you, this is the plasma membrane. The chemical compositions are very clearly shown here, and which is composed of a lipid bilayer, then the carbohydrate and the proteins are embedded in the lipid bilayer, that I'll be discussing by showing the other diagrams. But before that, we should know what is the chemical composition of cell membrane. Chemically, the cell membrane composed of phospholipoprotein. The lipid and proteins are the major components which constitutes about 60% of the plasma membrane. Then what is the function of protein? The proteins provides mechanical strength, as well as the protein helps in transportation of different substance. So while discussing the transportation through the plasma membrane, we'll discuss about the role of the proteins in transportation. And besides that, some of the proteins present in the membrane also act as enzyme. Then regarding the lipids, excuse me, regarding the lipids, which accounts for 28 to 79%, but this depends upon the type of cell and the organisms involved. The lipids of the plasma membrane are of three types, that is phospholipids, glycolipids and sterols. Very, very important. The sterol found in the membrane may be cholesterol in case of animals. It may be phytosterol in case of plants, or ergosterol in case of microorganisms. And the other composition of the plasma membrane is also carbohydrate, which constitutes the minimum portion of the cell membrane, that is 2 to 10%. And these carbohydrates of this plasma membrane are covalently linked to both lipid and protein components. You know what is covalent linking, you have studied it in chemistry. So let me show you the picture. So here you can see, this is as I told you that the composition of the plasma membrane is lipid, phospholipid, then protein and little amount of carbohydrate. So here you can see that the phospholipid forms a bilayer which is forming a quasi-fluid structure. Okay, and this phospholipid layer, each phospholipid molecule has a polar head or hydrophilic head and hydrophobic tail. Hydrophilic means water loving head and water hatting tail is there. So the tail is facing towards the inner side of the interior of the membrane, whereas the polar head is projected outward. So this lipid bilayer forms a quasi-fluid structure in which different types of proteins are embedded. So here you can see these blue color structures are different types of proteins. So here you can observe that some of the proteins are very deeply situated, whereas some proteins are superficially situated. And sometimes these proteins, as I said, that carbohydrates are also present. These carbohydrates, you can see that they are either associated with the proteins, they form the glycoproteins, or they are associated with the lipids to form the glycolipids. So this is about the chemical composition, and regarding the lipids I have told you that they have glycolipids and esterols, that is cholesterol in case of animals. Excuse me. Then the most accepted or the improved model of the structure of cell membrane, which was proposed by Singer and Nicholson in 1972, was the fluid mosaic model. So according to this model, the lipid bilayer forms a quasi-fluid structure which enables the lateral movement of the proteins within the bilayers. The protein can move, but the lipid cannot move. The lipid layers cannot move, but the protein can move within the membrane. And the fluidity of the plasma membrane is due to the phospholipids, which is rich in unsaturated fatty acids. The phospholipid forms the main component of the cell membrane because it provides a structural framework to the membrane. So this is explaining the fluid mosaic model. So here you can see the the phospholipid bilayer is there, in which the proteins are embedded. The blue color proteins are embedded, and these proteins you can see these proteins, due to the fluid nature of this membrane, the protein can move within the membrane. And these proteins are again of different types. The proteins which are very deeply situated associated with this membrane are known as integral protein, whereas those proteins which are present superficially are called peripheral proteins. They can be separated from the membrane easily. But the integral proteins cannot be separated from the membrane easily. Besides that, here I can show you the white color head, that is the hydrophilic heads of the lipid molecule, and the yellow tails of the lipid molecules, which are hydrophobic. And these branched chains are the carbohydrates. I hope it is clear to you. The next let us discuss the nature of the lipids and proteins present in the cell membrane. The lipids are amphipathic. What does it mean? Amphipathic means the structure of the lipids are asymmetric. That means they are not completely polar or not completely non-polar. So they have a hydrophilic polar head and a hydrophobic non-polar tail. So this nature is called amphipathic nature of the lipid. And on the outer side of some of lipids, sugar chains are attached to their polar heads, hence known as glycolipids. I have shown you in the picture. So these are the glycolipids, which are, so this is glycolipid attached to the polar head of the lipid. Then regarding the proteins, there are two kinds of proteins found in the membrane, that is peripheral proteins, which I have already told you, which can be separated easily from the membrane. They are superficially situated. They are also called extrinsic protein. And the proteins which are embedded very tightly with the membrane, very difficult to get separated from the membrane, are the integral or intrinsic protein. Now, let us discuss the function of the plasma membrane or cell membrane. The most important function of the cell membrane is transportation, and that transportation is called transmembrane transportation. And there are various methods of transmembrane transport. So what are these? Let us see. Basically the transmembrane transport is of two types, that is passive transport and active transport. Passive transport means the transport which takes place without the expense of energy. But active transport means the transport in which huge amount of energy is used. Now again, this passive transport is two types, that is simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. Simple diffusion means when the transport of substance takes place from higher concentration to lower concentration without any support or without getting facilitated by anything like proteins, and this is a very slow process. But facilitated diffusion is bit rapid than the simple diffusion, where the process of diffusion is facilitated by some carrier protein. But remember, here proteins are involved but not energy is utilized. So it is a passive transport. So the facilitated diffusion also takes place from higher concentration to lower concentration without the expense of energy, but it requires a carrier protein which supports the transportation or which facilitates the process of transportation. Now these proteins which help in or which facilitate the process of diffusion are of two types, that is channel protein and other is passive carrier protein. So in channel protein, the protein forms a channel which channelize the substance from higher concentration to lower concentration through the membrane. But carrier protein attaches to the substance which needs to be transported. Then the carrier protein moves within the membrane, then transports the substance. Then active transport, as I have told you, it always requires energy. So it is active transport. And why it requires energy? Because this transport takes place from lower concentration to higher concentration. That is against the concentration gradient. Now let us discuss the simple diffusion and osmosis in details. Simple diffusion, as I told you, it is a passive transport where there is no energy is utilized. Um, Here the solutes which transports through the membrane are usually neutral. They are not charged. They are neither positively charged nor negatively charged. And the transportation takes place through the membrane along the concentration gradient. Along the concentration gradient means from higher concentration to lower concentration. Now what is osmosis? Osmosis is the term used to refer specifically to the diffusion of water only across a semi-permeable membrane. And since the plasma membrane is semi-permeable and more appropriately selectively permeable, so the diffusion of water through such membrane is called osmosis. Excuse me. Now here in the picture you can see this is a simple diffusion. The process is shown. So this is the cell membrane. The lipid bilayer cell membrane is there. Now you can see on outer side of this membrane the molecule, a particular solute is more in quantity, whereas inside the membrane it is present in less quantity. So here you can see without the expense of the energy, how these molecules are very slowly transported through this membrane. So initially there was no such solute molecule inside the inside of the cell, or you can say the intracellular space, whereas more solute were present outside the cell. But gradually you can see how the movement is taking place, and till the equilibrium is maintained, this process continues. Okay, so this is simple diffusion which can take place through any membrane, any permeable membrane. It is a slow process and it is not facilitated by anything. No energy is used, so it is a passive process. Now facilitated diffusion. In facilitated diffusion, as I have told you, that it is also the transport of substance from higher concentration to lower concentration. You can see this is extracellular space where more solute particles are there, but inside of the cell less solute particles are there. But the process of diffusion says that the transport of substance is from higher to lower concentration. So here the diffusion is taking place, but the diffusion process is facilitated by certain proteins. So as I have told you, one is carrier protein, other is channel protein. So here you can see the protein channel. So here a transmembrane protein which is present across the membrane forms a channel, so that these particles can be channelized. They will get a specific direction to move into the interior of the cell. So the process of diffusion is facilitated by this protein channel. Now another protein I have told you about, that is carrier protein. So the carrier protein, as you can see here, the carrier protein can trap the molecule specific solute particle. Then the protein moves within the membrane and releases the solute particle to the interior. So this is how the transport of, or the diffusion process is facilitated by the protein channel and the carrier protein. The protein channel never move within the membrane, but the carrier protein can move and can release the solute particle that they have trapped from outer space or extracellular space, and they transfer it to the intracellular space. Now active transport, as I have told you, that it always takes place against the concentration gradient, means from lower concentration to higher concentration of the solute. So that's why since it is taking place against the concentration gradient, so the process requires huge amount of energy. That's why it is called active transport. For example, sodium potassium pump. So here you can see this is the membrane, cell membrane. Here certain transmembrane proteins are there. So this protein can transfer the ions, specific ions. Here you can see sodium and potassium ions are exchanged for each other, but this exchange depends upon the utilization of the energy. So here very clearly I have shown you. So three molecules of three sodium ions are exchanged for two potassium ion, and here you can see this is ATP, a triphosphate. These are three phosphates are there. So now you can see one phosphate is released, and when one phosphate bond is broken down, huge amount of energy is utilized and this protein channel is opened and these sodium ions are transported through the membrane. Similarly, you can see the potassium ion can also enter into the cell. They are exchanged for the sodium. When the sodium moves out, the potassium moves in. So the exchange of the ion, that is positive ion, takes place. So this requires energy because the sodium is already more outside the cell. but it is less inside the cell. But still then the transportation of sodium to the exterior is required for the transmission of something or some particular function. So that's why it is against the concentration gradient. That's why it requires more energy. Okay. So this is how the active transport takes place through a membrane. Now here a comparison of all the transportation method is given here. The first one is simple diffusion. Here you can see very slowly the molecules are transported through the membrane. They are passing through the membrane from higher to lower concentration, that is across the concentration or along the concentration gradient. In facilitated diffusion, there are two types of facilitated diffusion, one through channel protein and other through the carrier protein by the carrier protein. So they help in transporting the solute particle from higher to lower concentration without the expense of energy. But here the active transport, here the transportation is taking place from lower concentration to higher concentration. Here you can see this is low. The spherical molecule shown here is less in concentration, but it has to move outside. But in contrary, you can see these these solute particles are less outside, but they need to move inside. So they need to be exchanged for each other, and which requires ATP. So this is called active transport. Now besides these methods of transportation, there is another mode of transportation that takes place through the cell membrane, that is called bulk transport. It is the transport of large quantities of micromolecules or the macromolecules or the food particles through the membrane. And it is of two types, that is pinocytosis and phagocytosis. Pinocytosis means cell drinking, wherever some fluid, ions and molecules get into the cell by the process of endocytosis, then that is called pinocytosis. Okay, and for this purpose the ATP, calcium ion, fibrillar proteins and some contractile proteins like actin are required for the process of pinocytosis. Then let us see how this pinocytosis takes place. So this is the cell membrane, this is extracellular fluid. Suppose say some fluid along with some ions are needed to be taken by the cell, then the cell membrane of certain cell, it forms the folding like this, like a cup like structure which is called water cup. Then the fluids along with the solute particles or the ions are enclosed here, then that is pinched off to form the vesicle. Now this vesicle is inside the cell, and whenever required these substances will be released into the cytoplasm and that will be utilized. So since here only fluid substances along with certain ions are transported or taken off by the cell, so it is known as pinocytosis or cell drinking. Similarly, another process of transportation is there, that is called phagocytosis. It is otherwise known as cell eating or ingestion of the large particles. You have studied about the nutrition in amoeba, how amoeba captures food with the help of its pseudopodia. It forms the food cup, then the food cup is converted into food vacuole. So in the same way, the cells, some other cells like the neutrophils, the monocytes, the Kupffer cells of liver, reticular cells of spleen, histocytes of the connective tissue, macrophages, they also feed upon the pathogens or the any germs that enters into our body. So how do they engulf? This engulfment of the solid particles is called phagocytosis. This phagocytosis cannot be carried out by all types of cell. It can be carried out by some specific cells only. That is, the plasma membrane has certain receptors, and the receptors will receive only certain type of particles. Okay, in some cases it is food particle, in some cases it is the pathogen, specific type of pathogen. Then after receiving these pathogens or the food particles, it forms the food vacuole, that is called phagosomes. Here you can see the picture. Excuse me. So here you can see, this is, suppose say this is a phagocytic cell which needs to engulf the bacteria. So here is the plasma membrane receptor, and this receptor can sense that the bacterium is in contact with this cell. Then when it wants to engulf, it forms the pseudopodia like structure, and you know that the monocytes, the lymphocytes, these are all amoeboid cells, amoeba like cells, so they can change their shape. So now you can see they are forming a cup-like structure. Then they trap the bacterium. Then the bacterium along with this vacuolar structure is pinched off, and this structure is called phagosome. Now this phagosome moves inside the cell, and during its movement the bacterium is digested. Now we'll discuss some of the other functions of cell membrane. The cell membrane also provides mechanical strength, and it is the protective layer. It is responsible for the transportation, which we have already discussed. And it also helps in diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Excuse me. Now the next cell envelope is the cell wall. It was also discovered by Robert Hooke. It is the outermost rigid, protective, non-living and supportive layer found in all plant cells, bacteria, cyanobacteria and some protists. It is not found in animal cell. Cell wall is organized at telophase of the cell division. The fragments of endoplasmic reticulum, vesicles of Golgi body together constitute the phragmoplast, from where the cell wall is formed. Very important. The algae have cell wall which is made up of cellulose, galactans, mannans and minerals like calcium carbonate. While in other plants it consists of cellulose, hemicellulose, pectin and proteins. So here you can see the picture of the plant cell which contains the cell wall. The green color outer covering is the cell wall which is present outer through the cell membrane. Now let us discuss the structure of cell wall in details. The cell wall of a young plant cell is called primary cell wall, which is capable of growth. Gradually this primary cell wall diminishes. The cells of the primary cell wall gradually matures and they become the secondary cell wall. Sometimes the primary cell wall exists and the secondary cell wall is formed inner to the primary cell wall. Then another layer, the outermost layer of the cell wall is called middle lamella, which is present as a common cementing layer between two cells. Suppose there are two cells, in between two cells there is a common middle lamella is present. It is a common layer for two adjacent cells. And very important, children, you have to remember, it is formed of calcium magnesium pactate, calcium and magnesium pactate. Besides that, the cell wall may have pits wherever the cell wall is made up of lignin, and the lignified cell walls are present in sclerenchyma, the vessels and tracheids of xylem. They have pit. The tracheids in gymnosperms have maximum number of pits. Here you can see the structure of a cell wall, and this is the plasma membrane. Outer to the plasma membrane, the primary cell wall is present. The primary cell wall is often converted into secondary cell wall, and then you can see the middle lamella. Middle lamella is a common cementing substance, and this cementing substance is present between two adjacent cells. And here you can see the composition of the primary cell wall. It is made up of hemicellulose, pectin fibers, then cellulose microfibrils, and some soluble proteins are also there. Now, the most important term you need to remember is plasmodesmata. What is plasmodesmata? In case of plant cell, in between the two adjacent cells, there is a protoplasmic connection, which is also called cytoplasmic strand. So here you can see this is one cell, this is another cell, and both the cells are in connection with each other, and through their cell wall, the cytoplasm of one cell is in connection with the other cell. So this cytoplasmic strand is called plasmodesmata. Now, what is the difference between primary cell wall and secondary cell wall? I have told you that the primary cell wall is present in the young cell, but in mature cell, the primary cell wall is converted into the secondary cell wall. But sometimes the primary and secondary cell wall both exist in a cell. Let us first see the composition of both the type of cell wall. The primary cell wall is made up of cellulose microfibrils, which are arranged in a dispersed manner. But in secondary cell wall, the microfibrils are parallel to the long axis of the cell. Then in primary cell wall, hemicellulose is present in large quantity, about 50%. But in case of secondary cell wall, hemicellulose is present only in 25%. Then primary cell wall have lipid, which is 5 to 10%, and protein 5%. But in case of secondary cell wall, protein and lipids are either absent or present in very little amount. Primary cell wall is formed by the intersuspensions, and the secondary cell wall is formed by intersuspensions and apposition method. So this is I am not talking much about this because these are the topic of higher level, so you can ignore these points. The fourth point can be ignored. Then primary cell wall is universal layer. It is present in all the cell. But the secondary cell wall is absent in meristem cell. That means the cell which is dividing, which is not mature enough, in those cells the secondary cell wall is absent. So here you can see this is the cell wall structure, how the adjacent cells are connected with each other by their cytoplasmic strand, that is called plasmodesmata. Here very clearly the plasmodesmata is shown. This is the cell wall. This is one cell. This is another cell, and in between which the plasmodesmata is present. Now, function of cell wall. The cell wall not only gives shape to the cell, it also protects the cell from mechanical damage and infection. It also helps in cell-to-cell interaction and provides a barrier to undesirable macromolecules. The cell wall is dead, it is permeable, and because of cell wall, plant cell can withstand a lot of variations in the surrounding medium as compared to the animals. So we have seen that the plant can survive in harsh condition even. That is possible due to the nature of the cell wall. Okay, so these are the basic functions of the cell wall, and I hope the cell wall and cell membrane both are very much clear to you. So in our next session, we'll discuss the structure of cytoplasm. Because the cytoplasm contains many organelles, so we cannot discuss all those organelles with the structure and function in one session. So we'll discuss the cytoplasmic organelles in two sessions. So in our next session, we'll discuss few organelles of the cytoplasm. That's why cytoplasm 1. So thank you children. Thank you very much for watching my video till end. Thank you once again.